Okay, this is potatoes, onions, eggs, and cheese. Kind of like a camper's breakfast, but on a cast iron skillet, cooked on the stove, and then put into the oven to melt the cheese. So it's going to be pretty quick and easy. First, we're just going to rinse off our potatoes and then dice them up. Going to scrub the potatoes with a scour pad. Because we're going to leave the skin on them when we fry them in the skillet. And so now, about 5 minutes before you're going to fry them, heat up the skillet. So just scrub them all with a scour pad. And then we're going to take our potatoes and cut them in half. Just going to dice them up. And check, make sure there isn't anything wrong with the potatoes. If there is, cut out that part. And I like to make them small enough that they can be a mouthful or fit in your mouth easily. Not too big, not too small. And then we're going to do enough that's going to be a nice layer in our cast iron pan. So we're using a 12-inch pan today. And I'm just going to make enough potatoes that'll fit into that pan. So I'm going to go ahead and dice them up until it gets to be about the size of our pan. Okay, so we've got enough potatoes diced up that'll fit in the pan and fill it good. And I'm going to put those into a bowl. And then I'm going to dice up an onion. I need to sharpen my blades, darn it.
Talking about Stembridge, kick back, thanks. You look like you need to sit down with me. That's pretty sweet.
And I think the recipe calls for a cup of onions. But we've got a 12-inch pan instead of a 10-inch pan, so it's going to be a little bit more. You can see where we're at. Okay, so we got about a cup. It's a little much. we'll add in until our mixture and our potatoes looks like a good mixture of onions. If I got too much, I won't put them in. So I'm gonna add in some of them, actually most of them there, and then just toss the potatoes and the onions together. And then we're going to add some salt and pepper. I like to use coarse black ground pepper. And a very liberal amount of pepper. So we're going to put a nice dark layer across the top of our bowl, and then we're going to mix it together. We're going to also add some salt to it. Looks good. And some salt. Kind of liberal on the salt too. And then mix it all together. So like so. And then we're just about ready to put that into our pan. Okay, now we've got a strainer we're going to use in a little bit, because when we finish cooking the potatoes, we're going to put the potatoes into the strainer and then heat up our sausage that we're going to add to it, and then mix the potatoes back into it. So anyways, we're going to drain off all the fat that's used for the frying of the potatoes. Okay, so our pan's been heating up. We're going to add some canola oil. I think the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup or something, or 2 teaspoons. I don't know, a small amount. We're going to put a layer of oil in the bottom of the pan. So less than a 1/4 inch thick. Maybe that's what they were meaning by a 1/4 tablespoon, whatever. Let that warm up just a little bit. The pan's already hot, so it won't take long for the oil to get hot. And then we're going to fry the potatoes and onions. So now I've got it on medium to medium high. The first few minutes I'm going to leave it at medium high, like 6 out of 10, and then we're going to turn it down to about 4.5. So we'll cook it for like 3 minutes at a time, and then stir it, and with what was I going to say? Oh, with the cast iron pan, a flat spoon or flat wooden spoon. Either the arched one that I like, or a kind of a cheap generic one. But the ones that have the angle on them, they just fit perfectly into the groove around the cast iron pan, and it works great for when you're cleaning up afterwards, as well as being able to stir the bottom of the potatoes that are trying to stick to the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to go with my old reliable. Okay, so then I cook it like 3 minutes at a time, and then stir it, and then keep going until when you put a fork into the potatoes, they're tender. So we'll return. Okay, so after 3 minutes, we're gonna stir the potatoes off at the bottom of the pan. We just want to make sure that it doesn't stick. And then kind of turn them over a little bit so that they're evenly cooked. Okay, now we're on our second cycle, so I'm going to turn it down to about medium-low, 4.5. And we're going to cook these until they're done. So. Okay, so there's 3 more minutes. As it gets closer to being done, the potatoes will start to stick fairly easily. So by keeping it scraped clean every few minutes and stirred well, makes them so they'll, 1, cook evenly, 2, they won't stick to the pan so bad that you're fighting it. Whoops. Okay, next 3 minutes. Scrape. I think it's like 20-25 minutes of cooking the potatoes until they're tender. They're kind of feeling a little more tender. We stick a fork in it, see how they're doing. Okay, they're still hard to put a fork into it, so a few more minutes. So while we're waiting for our potatoes to finish up, we're going to go ahead and put about 10, 12, let's see, what do I got? 2, 4, 6, 8. I got 10 eggs I'm going to put in and scramble them. I like to use one hand when breaking eggs. That way you only have one hand that's Needs to be rinsed off. Got an eggshell down it. There you are. And usually cracking with one hand goes pretty well, but sometimes it screws up. You just kind of pry it apart with your hand and worked out. And then we're going to go ahead and scramble those up. Fork, whisk, whatever. Okay, it's about time to stir the potatoes again. And we could add a little bit of salt and pepper to our eggs. And you can kind of feel the texture of the potatoes change as it gets closer to being done, because they just feel softer, you know. They're looking pretty good. I think we're on our last 3-minute frying of our potatoes. Let's go ahead and check them with the fork again. Well, that one went in easy. But that one, I think these are probably pretty good because they're going to cook for 10-15 minutes in the oven. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fry them a little bit longer while we're waiting for the oven to heat up, because I forgot to turn it on to 350 because we're going to top it. So actually our potatoes are done. We can go ahead and put these into our strainer and we can start heating up the, well, we'll do that after. Okay, so when these are done cooked, we're going to put these into a strainer and strain off all the oil, and then while that's straining, we'll warm up the sausage, which I have just some regular Jimmy Dean sausage, and I went ahead and I fried this ahead of time, and scrambled sausage. So we're just going to warm that up after we pull the potatoes out. Okay. Go ahead and stir them up. And we're going to go ahead and dump these into a strainer. And the bottom of the pan is still kind of wet with some grease. I'm going to put in our already cooked sausage. And we're just going to warm that up. Okay, so when your sausage starts popping and is obviously nice and warm because it's just starting to brown a little bit, because I had cooked it before, but just cooked, not browned. And now we're going to add in our potatoes and onions. And we're just going to stir that together good. Our oven is still preheating, but it should be getting pretty close. We're only going up 350, and it's not too critical because all we're doing is going to be melting the cheese onto it. Okay, so now this is... We're going to warm this up, the potatoes up a little bit, so we're going to cook them for just a few more minutes. We'll put a couple. And then we're going to add the eggs onto the top of that and let it cook only about halfway through. About another minute left of the 2 minutes. I just want the potatoes and the sausage in this pan nice and warm so that when you add the eggs to it, they're going to start to adhere to the potatoes and sausage so that it all kind of blends together. Okay, so only about a minute and a half, whatever. Just until they're hot. Timer off. I'm going to go ahead and add our 10 scrambled eggs onto the top of this. Now I'm just going to let that cook for just a couple minutes, and we want to cook about halfway through, so we're just going to let it cook into it, and then we're going to stir it once, and hopefully it'll still be a little bit liquidy, but not too much. Oh, and our oven's up to temp, so that's cool. And kind of do the jiggle factor. Well, we could, now that it should have a layer on the bottom a little bit. So we'll go ahead and scrape it just like, kind of like we were doing with the potatoes only. So scrape it off the bottom. And this is where the rounded edge of this angled spoons come in so nice, because you can just scrape the edge of the pan. And then as we stir this in, you can see the eggs are starting to get done. Are starting to cook, actually. So we just want to kind of stir it until it's almost done. Till all the liquid of the eggs is kind of absorbed into the potatoes and sausage and everything. So, and I want to go around the edge real quick. Because we're going to transfer this over here. Because now we're going to top it with cheese. We're going to shut off our burner. So now it's still a real moist plate. And we're going to top it with the cheese. And I don't know, I just grated some cheese and we're just going to cover the top. Fairly thick, not too bad, but after it's done cooking for 15 minutes, we're going to stir it again and all this cheese will be mixed into the whole plate. So that's about right. Now we can put it in the oven. For 15 minutes. Okay, it's been 15 minutes. Let's see what it looks like. Well, as you can see, the cheese is all melted down into the potatoes and the onions and the sausage. And so now we're going to go ahead and stir it. Oh, and look at this. It's nice and brown on the bottom. The eggs are cooked and they're not stuck to the bottom at all. A little stuck to the sides, but this is where the spoon comes in handy. And this is done, so we're done with the oven. Anyways, we just want to incorporate the cheese into the potatoes, but we also want to scrape everything off of the pan. And this looks delicious. And now, this is when you want to taste test it. Because if it needs any more salt and pepper, because we did salt and pepper the potatoes well, but not the eggs, so it's possible that it's a little bland. Pretty good. Could use a little more pepper though, I think. But this is my downfall. I sometimes pepper things a little bit too much. But I didn't put any cayenne in it, so Now this can be served hot right onto a plate, and you can put some ketchup on it. Or you can put it into a tortilla and make a breakfast burrito out of it right away. Or we can go ahead and put this into a pan and use it for making breakfast burritos for the next day, or for 2 or 3 days, depending upon how many and how big of a breakfast burrito you have. So there we go. There is our potatoes, onions, eggs, cheese, and sausage. And the original recipe calls for ham, but we use the sausage instead. So, enjoy!